Hi, welcome to Ketobiography. I'm your host, Robin Dobbins. My next guest turned a deep curiosity about ketones into a mission to bring high performance ketone esters to everyday people, not just elite athletes. He's the founder and CEO of KetoneAid and Hard Ketones, companies known for pioneering ultra pure ketone drinks and innovative ketone cocktails. His products are designed to support focus, energy, and recovery, and to offer a new kind of buzz that raises ketones instead of relying on traditional alcohol. Please welcome Frank Llosa to Ketobiography.
Hi,
Hello and welcome.
thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so
Excited.
glad you're here. So, as we were talking before we went live, I'm not a big products person, so this is kind of a first for me to talk about a product, but I'm sure there's a big story involved, and I'm a storytelling person.
All right.
So I'm going to turn it over to you to tell the story, but I do have this list of questions. So I think we're going to have a great conversation today. So
Great.
tell me how you got started.
The backstory is through my wife's godfather. So there were these rumblings in the family dinners about this godfather that I would see, once every 6 months, how he should be getting Olympic gold medals for what he did with the Olympic teams because of his biochemistry background. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So then I found out that Dr. Richard Beach is the guy's name. If you want to take a deep dive on him, the book is called Ketones, the Fourth Fuel by Travis Christofferson that talks about Warburg, Krebs, and Dr. Beach worked under Hans Krebs, like the Krebs cycle, Nobel Prize winning guy. And I learned that he was working on ketones, and he's not the type of person that you want to walk up to at a dinner party and be like, so what do you do? He's just like, he doesn't feel like having a 4-hour lecture. So, he sends you on your way. So I instead took a deep dive into, what are ketones, what are exogenous ketones, ketogenic diet. And the only experience I had with it was my best friend before going out, he was eating a pound of cheese. I'm like, what are you doing? He was overweight. He was eating a pound of cheese before going out. And he's like, oh, I'm losing weight. I'm like, okay, good luck with that, buddy. But, I had no understanding what it is. Finally took a deep dive so that when we're at the next, dinner party, I could converse with him and he would, have someone to talk to that has a little bit of a background in it. And it formed a new relationship. And then he'd been working for 10, 20 years specifically on making this delivery mechanism of drinking ketones instead of the body making it through a ketogenic diet or fasting, which we'll get into. And after a while, he was, trying to help him raise money. He wanted someone to give him $20 million and have a tanker full of it, and people walk to the back and just get a spigot, and easy as that. There's nothing, business is overrated, and just make it, just do it. It's like, it doesn't work that way. And back then the VCs were all interested in CBD oil and the promise of that. And our pitch was at the time $60 to $70 worth a day of something that tastes like vomit. Like, are you in? Like, sign here. It's like, no, I could just,
Yummy.
sign up one of these 10 other CBD oil companies and it'd be much easier. And after a while, he was just like, why don't you go do it? And I was like, but I have a real estate background. I don't have a chemistry background. But, sure enough, I switched paths and do a lot of chemistry right now. And I live and breathe and think and even dream sometimes in chemistry. And I don't even remember taking a chemistry class, but I've learned a couple things along the way. And I tell people when I know things and when I don't. Sometimes things are over my head when it comes to the science, and I don't pretend. I'm like, hey, you got me. That's my level. I can point you in the right direction above that, but you've maxed out my capabilities.
I'm the same way.
Yeah,
So
so
you can talk as low level as you want because I won't understand anything higher than that.
okay, well then you won't be a challenging host, but there have been more challenging hosts, and I'm like, I probably should know that one too, which is embarrassing, but I'll tell you, I don't know. So I'll tell you when I don't know things. So yeah, the first couple of years, this drink used to cost $10,000 a serving, and we had to bring it down to $30, and then we found that the dosing was way too high, so you can actually take much less and less, and now people take $2 to $10 worth a day, depending on the situation. Some will take more, The elite athletes will still take $25 worth twice, sometimes during the Tour de France race. But the elite athletes and the athletic market is actually only one third of our market. People think that it's all for sport, but there's so much beyond that, which we can go into. But yeah, so it took a couple of years to finally scale it up. And then for the first few years after that, we weren't able to meet demand, so we'd be sold out frequently. And just now, the last couple of years, finally getting into our groove where we can make more than we sell. And it's been a interesting ride. And now there's new competitors coming in, making all these claims with different, far inferior different products, and making claims that are based on the ketone ester science, but it's not the same molecule. And it's just really confusing for consumers, what to believe, because it's a very good sales pitch. And we can cover some of that stuff, but yeah, I call it science hijacking instead of, they'll say backed by science, and every paper that they list is a different molecule. It's not the molecule that they're selling. And it's just like, well, but they'll argue, they'll both raise your blood ketones, and therefore the end product should be the same. Okay, should be until you go and test it. Let's see. So yeah, so that's the high level story that I hit on.
The backstory. Well, I think the first thing we should dig into is that last piece, that the confusing consumer. So I would definitely be a confused consumer.
Right.
So going on that line, why would someone want to pursue using exogenous ketones? And then specifically, I know that there's different forms of exogenous ketones. So why would we want to choose an ester over a salt?
And let's go over the different forms first, if you don't mind. So there's this general umbrella that is called exogenous ketones, where you're consuming ketones separately. And I even include in that the MCT oil, the C8 oil, that it's a type of coconut oil. So sometimes coconut oil will be hard. So that'll be C12, C14. It has a longer chain, so it's harder at room temperature. But then it gets more and more liquidy as you get lower, and it's a smaller molecule that will then reach different parts of your body. And it's called C8, MCT oil C8. And that molecule I included in the exogenous ketones because it has two aspects to it. One aspect is just the fact that it's an oil, just like the hard oil. It'll add towards your macros, which will help you on a ketogenic diet hit your 80% fat, 80% fat, 15% protein, 5% carbs. It helps you with your macros. So it does that. But then the other half of it is an exogenous ketone, because 15% of it will turn into and convert to ketones itself. So that means even if you have a sugar-based cake and you drink the C8, your blood ketones will go up. So it's not the ketogenic diet part, it's the exogenous that the C8 converts. So that is, the first exogenous ketone we can talk about. The downside of that is massive GI problems. So people have to multiple weeks, 6 weeks, graduate up to 1 tablespoon, even a half of a tablespoon. One of the number one videos watched on my YouTube channel is my wife having taken just a slightly too much like 10 years ago, and she's just on the toilet. The toilet's closed, but she's just bent over like, oh, my stomach, it feels like daggers and stuff. And that is they call it the diarrhea diet. You take a slightly too much of it, or you take a lower quality brand, it'll have a little bit of the C6, which is even exponentially worse. So C8, if you're doing other coconut oils in the higher end, or even liquid coconut oil, maybe even MCT oil, but if it's C8 specific, you don't want to go for the cheaper brand, because 1% of that being C6 can change everything on the GI. So she was like, bent over, stabbing of the stomach, and just, and then the other products that might be known are called ketone salts. So what they do is they take beta hydroxybutyrate, which is the main molecule that your body makes when you burn fat. It'll make beta hydroxybutyrate, but it is an acid, beta hydroxybutyric acid. BHB free acid is the other name. It's too acidic, so if you drank it directly, burn a hole in your gut. We can talk about that later. So then these ketone salts companies will buffer it with a salt, with a base. So mainly sodium or magnesium, potassium. Some get tricky and they say, salt free or sodium free. They're just loading up the other ones, which, too much magnesium gives you diarrhea, or something else gives you, it's bad for the liver, for, other toxicity. So they try to move the salts around to make them, get the maximum of each one before it has a negative side effect. And also those products are oftentimes are called racemic. Racemic, you might have seen supplements like L-tryptophan or D-ribose. You see these letters beforehand. One isn't better than the other. L isn't better than D when it comes to ribose, but certain molecules, the bioavailable form is sometimes the D form and sometimes it's the L form. With ketones, the bioavailable energy part is the D form, but it's much, much cheaper to make out of China these racemic ketone salts. So it has the D form and the L form. And we can have a hour-long debate about this new trend saying that the L form is a secret sauce, which is garbage, I think. But, we can get to that later. The D form is what is bioavailable, that is in your body, what your body makes. But these salts on Amazon that are super cheap, people see, oh, I'm supposed to buy exogenous ketones. These look cheap, but they're actually more expensive because they don't work. And you can't just 1 gram versus 1 gram compare the two, because it doesn't work that way. You'll see these products that have 10 grams of racemic salt, but then only half of it is bioavailable, so it's 5 grams, but then it has 20% salt, which makes it more like 4 grams. But if you compare that to a ketone ester, it's more like 2 grams. It keeps on just not the same. And then you have the salt overload. And I'm a huge fan of salt, but massive amount of salt then blocks some of the BHB ketones. It just doesn't work. And these companies will sell these exogenous ketone salt pills that somehow still have 4-star reviews. I don't know how they manipulate that the amount that's in there is just nothing. I mean, it's just complete placebo, just does nothing, tiny amounts, and racemic. I think if any benefit that they might be actually noticing is the salt, not even the ketones. So when you enter into a ketogenic diet, everyone knows you lose 3 to 5 pounds of water weight, and you need massive amounts of salt replenishment. And people say, oh, I put more salt in my eggs. I said, did you unscrew the top and put the salt? Because you need grams of salt. Well, these racemic ketone salts happen to have what? A lot of salt. So maybe they're feeling a little bit better on the keto flu, but they could have saved a whole bunch of money just by buying regular pink Himalayan sea salt or LMNT or whatnot. And some people report after 2 to 3 weeks of using these ketone salts, oh, wow, my ring finger, I can't put it back on. Why? Because after that initial phase of massive salt replenishment that you need, if you have this excess salt, then you're going to get all puffy and retain more water, which defeats a lot of the purpose of the ketogenic diet. So that's a ketone salt. Then there's other products. So the ketone ester is D-beta hydroxybutyrate, so the D form, beta hydroxybutyrate, bound to, and that's the important part also, the ester is the bound to. Some companies skip the ester and they say, oh, it's just as good. We'll just put this ingredient, stir it around and call it a day. But the ester is when it's a molecular bond. So it's not just BHB ketones attached, BHB ketones and a salt. They're not really attached, meaning when you put them in water, ketones go over here, salt goes over here. And when it goes through GI, it can get broken down along the way. A ketone ester is an actual bond that stays together as it goes through your gut and gets more delivered into your bloodstream. And a lot of drug companies will make esters of molecules to make them more bioavailable, to get them in the system. So this is DBHB bound to R13-butanediol. And that molecule, when you consume it, it goes through you get into the bloodstream, and then the ester separates into DBHB and R13. But then the R13 then goes to the liver and converts to D-beta hydroxybutyrate. So it's a gorgeous molecule. If you have any chemistry background, people would appreciate that it's the target molecule bound to a molecule that converts back to the target molecule. So it's the uttermost efficient molecule. And other molecules now will have DBHB bound to glycerol. Okay, but if the target is the BHB, then you have to take twice as much because you don't get the other half benefit. And then the glycerol turns into sugar, which that kind of counteracts the benefit of the ketones. So then you have this 3 times as much, 4 times, and then before you know it, it's just not efficient. The Dr. Veach ketone ester, super efficient, super compact, without these extra things that just get in the way and just block the effectiveness. So with the R13-butanediol that converts into ketones, I said to Dr. Veach, I said, hey, it's a lot more expensive making this ester. So why can't we just deliver the R13? And it's weaker on a per gram basis, but so why don't we just kick it up, give it 50% more, 100% more, and still be much cheaper? And his answer was epic. He said, well, we tried that, but the mice were stumbling. And so R13-butanediol, the word diol means di means 2, and OL means alcohol. Now, when people hear alcohol, they think, oh, I don't drink alcohol, or alcohol's bad. Alcohol that you drink in beer, vodka, wine, if you were to distill all of them, it would be ethanol. And ethanol is the true toxin. Ethanol is what converts to acetaldehyde and then acetate in the brain. The R13-butanediol does not convert to acetaldehyde. Converts to a different aldehyde, but it's a lot less toxic, if even toxic at all, and then converts to BHB. So there is that interim step. But when he told me that, the light bulb went off, and I said, wow, I think some people might want that. Now, not so much stumbling, but getting closer to that and getting a buzz. And that is our second product line that we'll get into, which is the hard ketones. So the hard ketones is just the R13-butanediol, whereas the ketone ester is a DBHB bound to R13. And the dosing is much different. So the ketone ester, we say 2.5 grams of active is 1 serving, but the hard ketones, 17 grams is 1 serving. So it's like 8 times difference in power, because there are some companies now that will just sell the diol, the R13-butanediol, just sell that and say that it's for cognition and for performance. I'm like, what are you talking about? We're selling it for an alcohol alternative to relax and get a buzz. You want to take that before a marathon? Like, how are you able to justify the science? And they do this science hijacking where they cite all these ketone ester papers. And then people will ask, oh, well, your molecule has R13 in it, so how is it not doing that? No, it's a 20x difference in quantity. And too much water can be dangerous too, right? So you don't get the buzz effect with the ketone ester. So the ketone ester is in the exogenous ketone umbrella. And then you have this also known as KetoneDiol or R13-butanediol. And then there's a couple other ketone esters, which makes it confusing because our ketone ester was the only one for 10 years. And then the word ester means a bond of 2 ingredients. Now there's a couple other versions that are a bond of C8, the one that we talked about before, bound to R13-butanediol. So it's technically an ester, but it's a diester. There's 2 attachments as opposed to 1. So that gets a little bit confusing. And you would look at that and you say, oh, this has 20 grams or 15 grams per serving versus your 2.5 or 5 grams. But that one is a molecule that only 15% of it converts to BHB, bound to a molecule that 60, 70% of it converts to BHB. So you have to take 5 times more of it to have the same, if all that matters was the blood ketone levels, which hopefully we'll get into. That's not the end of the story. That's just a snapshot that your blood happens to hit that. You've got to look at everything else that's happening. But that one you have to take, for example, with food. Well, if you have to take 5 times more, you have to take it with food because of GI issues. That removes like 90% of our use cases. We're having people take it to extend a fast or on an empty stomach, or instead of having these different fuels. So now they might find benefits. They've got the money behind them to do a clinical trial for, cognitive improvement, and they might find some benefit. Great. But whatever they find, the benefit of our ester is going to be exponentially higher and much easier to obtain with taking much less and, this empty stomach thing.
Yeah, bioavailability seems to really be the big difference here.
Yeah, bioavailability, but it's not just, hey, just take more of that so that you can have 3 products and they all, test your blood and you're all at 1.5 millimolar. It doesn't mean that the actual NAD and NADPH ratios and energies changing the same. You can have higher ketones. There's ingredients that we could add that would artificially make the ketones look higher. How does it do that? It blocks the transporter. If we block the transporter so the ketones can't get out of there, you can test your ketones and be like, oh, look how high they are. And you would assume that that's better, but it's not. It's just it's pooling there. So just because 3 products might all be at 1 millimolar doesn't mean that it's the end result. But a lot of people think that's a common denominator to compare products, and it's just not. And it's just really confusing to explain that.
So you're like on this mission to kind of fix that issue with using data incorrectly, but then also you have this amazing product. We've gone down this road, and I've neglected to say or ask, why would people want to ingest ketones, and what benefit would they get from that in the first place? So you make a product because you know about ketones and your body wanting to use this fuel, but I eat a ketogenic diet, and I know that my ketogenic diet is going to raise my ketone level. So why would I need to raise it more? So what would the uses be for?
Right. So there's 2 distinct categories: people that are already fully keto and people that are not fully keto, not planning on being keto. So there's 2 distinct categories that have to be addressed separately. So if you're already in deep ketosis and you're already showing, let's say, 2 to 3 millimolars of ketones in your blood, taking exogenous ketones won't do a damn thing. That's it. And like this one athlete's like, oh, I do multi-day fasting before my race, and I'm at a 4 millimolar before my race. So I took yours. I'm like, why? To go to 7? Like it doesn't, it's like putting more gas into a gas tank and you can have a puddle underneath you. It's not going to make your car zoom off faster. Okay. But if you're, let's say, a ketogenic athlete, we hear this all the time. They say, well, I don't want to drink ketones. I make my own. They're free. And they have this like macho-ismo, comments and posts. And it's like, okay, let's just think about this for a second. Step back. If you were talking to a sugar-based athlete that their body makes sugar and has sugar, would you tell them, oh, or would they ever say, oh, I don't drink the gels, the sugar gels, because my body makes sugar gels? Like, that sounds ridiculous. It's the same thing. If you're a ketogenic athlete, separate from that person that fasted and went to 4 millimolars, if you're regular keto, you might have 0.7, 1 millimolar in your blood. And that's going to be burned off so fast when you run. By taking an exogenous, it might just bump it up a little bit, and just like a sugar-based person is just going to bump up their sugar. So it's compatible with that system as an alternate fuel. Instead of drinking sugar, you're drinking this fuel that's compatible with your system. Now, the next thing people are going to say is, oh, won't it shut down my own endogenous system? If I'm drinking a fuel, won't it stop me from making my own? I want to make my own. Yes, hyper technically, if you took a huge dose and you were already at a baseline of 2 millimolars from fasting, and then you take this huge dose of ketones, yeah, your body's going to be like, oh, we have enough fuel. I'm not going to keep on making ketones. But if it's a small amount, probably not. I mean, you have to do a whole clinical trial to prove people that are at 1 millimolar if they take exogenous. And when you test blood, you don't know whether it's exogenous ketones or from fasting. You can't really tell. You could maybe map out acetoacetate and kind of map out ratios and maybe see, but for the most part, you can't tell. But the idea is that it's just a compatible, you might eat avocados. Why? Because that's compatible with the ketogenic diet. You would just drink ketone ester because it's compatible with ketones. But yeah, if you're super high already and you want to use it for cognition, but your millimolars are already 1 or 2 millimolars, bumping it up 1 millimolar, you might not feel anything, because you're talking about I always say the ketogenic diet is best. Like, if you can do that and get everything you need, great. But yeah, if you're already at a 2 millimolar, you won't notice a difference. And this is an interesting thing with people that take it that are a little bit older for cognition. They'll sometimes contact me in a panic because they said, oh, my doctor said to be at 1.5 or 2 millimolars, but I swear I'm eating the same thing over the last 3 years and my numbers are going down. Have you experienced that at all? People talking about their blood numbers going down?
Yeah, absolutely.
I say, hold on. First of all, your stress is worse for your brain than anything else right there. Just being stressed about it. But the longer you are keto, the wider your transporter, your pipeline of delivering ketones to where they need to go is. It's called the MCT, not MCT oil, but MCT transporters gets broader. So your numbers will appear lower, but you're making the same amount of ketones. They're just getting sucked up into your brain and where they need to go. So relax. You're doing great. Some of these doctors that are recommending these numbers miss that minor detail, and then they send their clients into a tailspin, or they send them over to try our stuff. And I say, hey, you can try our stuff and you can do your pinprick and see that the numbers are better, but I don't care about the numbers. Do you feel better? If you feel noticeably better and your brain's better, okay, then double it up. It shows that your brain isn't being topped off completely. So the concept, Steve Cunnane came up with the brain energy gap. Your brain needs 100% of fuel, and let's say glucose is able to fuel 100% of it. Adding ketones, especially low dose, won't do anything because you're already being fueled. So super healthy doctors that might try the ester, they might not feel anything because their brain is fully fueled. But once you get something that is suboptimal, where it's only 60 or 70% of the brain being fueled by glucose, drinking exogenous ketones will fill that void and take you to 100%. So the lower your glucose impairment, the more of a glucose impairment that you have, the more the ketones will fill that gap. But if you're doing a low carb or more keto diet, not low carb, but actual keto, where you're actually making ketones, as opposed to low carb where your sugar might be low, but you're not actually making any ketones. If you're already being fueled by 60% glucose and the rest, or 20% glucose and the rest ketones, and you're filling up your tank, exogenous ketones won't do anything. But this is a 2 to 3 day test, not a 1 week, 3 month test. It's a 2 to 3 day test where you see if drinking anything helps top it off and you notice cognition. But if not, then you're not a candidate. You don't need any exogenous ketones, ours or any other stuff. Now, that person that might be working out, okay, you might want to crank up a little bit before your workout if it makes your workout better. Some people will do the opposite. They say, hey, I want to work on no fuel and just burn my body's fat for the workout. Okay, great. Then they might take it post-workout because there'll be a slump and the ketones have been burned up. Let's pop it back, bring your brain back before you're, start working at 8 or 9 a.m. That would be a use for it. So those are the people that are already keto, mixed use. Some don't need it at all. Some need it selectively. Some might not need it at all. There's also people that are transitioning into a ketogenic diet, and they'll say, oh, after 2 weeks of going keto, it's just not working for me. And I took an online quiz and it said that my body type is not keto friendly. So therefore, that's why it's not working for me. No. And this, it's not working for you because you did it wrong. You did 2 things wrong. You ate a whole bunch of meat. You ate way too much meat because you can't fathom 80% fat. So you're going to take huge protein. Protein, converts into glucose when you take too much of it. And the second thing is the salt depletion. You're just not getting enough salt, and salt is a fancy word in electrolytes. It's electricity lighting up your system. And if you don't have electricity in your system, you're going to feel lethargic. That's why sometimes the ketone salts work where regular salt would work. Just bouillon cubes, get your salt intake in. And people that they lower their carbs, but they're not making any ketones. So what do you have? You have no brain fuel for glucose, and you haven't really popped your ketones up. So you're in a state of no fuel. So technically, I guess you could take ketone ester to kind of pop that, fuel side, but it's not going to make you burn more fat. It's not going to teach your body to make ketones, which we'll get into later. The misconception of ketone esters and exogenous ketones. Oh, well, it trains your body. It gets your body used to ketones. It makes your body want to burn more fat. No, it doesn't do any of that, at least not scientifically, and maybe hyper scientifically somewhere, in mice, they might have shown some effect that someone then, but it doesn't do that. It skips the fat burning phase and just gives you the end product, which isn't going to make you burn fat more. You just, learn to skip it. So it can be confusing. So the people entering into a ketogenic diet, I'm sure you have your top, suggestions on how to do it, but some people will take 2 weeks on, doing it slowly and transitioning. I'm of the camp, if you're doing it under supervision, to do it quickly. So a 24-hour fast is a great way to rip off the Band-Aid, or be on a bicycle top speed for 30 seconds and burn off that glycogen. Let's do it really quickly, because if you do it really slowly, then you're just going to have the keto flu. And my wife, when she got the keto flu, her eyes were bulging, her heart was racing, she had a headache, fetal position in bed. Like, this is 10 years ago. All this damn biohacking stuff you make me try. And I called Dr. Veach, and he's like, oh, give her 15 salt pills. I'm like, 15? That's going to like overdose. She's like, no, if she went to the hospital, they give her what? A saline drip. Give her salt. So just, and within 15 minutes shows up. So people are doing it wrong, so they could use, ketone ester to help transition, but they could also just do it right. So they wouldn't need any exogenous ketones. It can make it easier if you wanted to rip off the Band-Aid and do a 2-day fast. Yes, a small amount of ketone ester along the way, so you're not, taking in more calories. Taking in any calories could be a way to get in. But the people that are not keto, I do suggest that they go low carb, because I think half of the problem is the sugar and half the solution is the ketones. And if I had to pick one, it's the sugar. The sugar is more of the problem than the ketones is the solution. So this one lady's like, oh, I have brain fog, this and that. Okay, great. Let's go through. What do you eat in the morning? A bowl of fruit. It's like, great. She's like, why is that great? Because that's the absolute worst thing that you can eat. So now everything's just for her. Let me make sure. It's not saying that a 7-year-old that has no glucose problem might be fine with the bowl of fruit. But if someone has a glucose impairment where they can't utilize sugar and they're having a bowl of fruit and then they have brain fog, stop the bowl of fruit. And first of all, that'll be a bigger impact than the benefit of adding the ketones. But you can try that as well, and it'd be a double stack. But the sugar is the problem. So people that are not fully keto, we have some practitioners that will have people come in on an empty stomach, and they'll just take $5 worth, like a shot of the better tasting ketone shot, and within 10 minutes, the more the person feels, the more of an indication that they have a glucose impairment problem. If you don't feel anything, great. You probably don't have, but the more you feel, the more you're like, oh, wow, the parting of the clouds. It's like, yep, you've got something. Now, never take that drink again and go do the diet.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. It's a really good test to see if what you're doing is working. So if you're getting a really good feeling after taking this little shot of this, then something within your diet must not be adding up correctly.
Yep. And you could be doing this every day for free. I mean, I've told traumatic brain injury people, like, you should be on a ketogenic diet. Now, my drink, they notice something like, yeah, okay, but you need, even better than that would be just a baseline of, ketones streaming daytime, nighttime, throughout, constantly. So for them, it should be a default. So it can be an early indication that, something is wrong. And the more that it works, the more that sugar is the problem. Mm-hmm. So even if you don't go fully keto, let's pay the $50, get a glucose meter, and let's just see if we can stop those peaks. Every single one of those peaks is like a nuclear bomb going to the brain. So let's stop those peaks. That you thought that you were having low carb, tortillas. Well, it was 100 and then it shot to 200. I guess they're not low carb for you. Some people, apples or berries. It's like, hey, if berries don't change your blood sugar, have at it. But they call them keto friendly. Like, okay, until you have a blood glucose monitor and have proven that, you probably want to stay away from, those as well. So you really want to stop that peak, because that peak is inflammation. That peak is going to your brain, creating a traffic jam and creating inflammation and problems. So non-keto people could use it as a test. Hey, I don't want to do a 2-week test to go keto and have keto flu. And probably a day before it starts to work is when they give up on that final day. And, oh, I needed to recarb. And then they start all over again and they never get to the nirvana. Yeah, they could take one drink and feel the nirvana and be like, oh, this is what I'm looking for. And then when they do the diet properly, they feel it, they're good. But non-ketogenic people that either are low carb or even don't want to change their diet at all, many of them will notice a difference taking it on an empty stomach without glucose on either side, if they have some level of glucose impairment, either just before a podcast or before an important meeting to kind of just fuel their brain up with a more efficient fuel. The brain, they like to say that the brain prefers ketones, but it's kind of like a bonfire prefers coal for slow burning. But if there's kindling there, it's going to burn the kindling first. So the sugar, how do you define the word preferred? It'll burn up the glucose first, but the better fuel is the ketones. So we have stockbrokers, CEOs that don't want to change their diet at all. Will take it selectively. And then for performance, athletic performance, for recovery, so post workout, a larger dose of the ketone ester. I'm not really a fan of this concept of a dual fuel where you load up on glucose and you load up on ketones and you kind of cross your fingers and hope that the metrics move. I'm not a fan of that because I kind of think of them as kind of competing with each other. So I'm more.
My first thought was that you're just wasting your money because you're going to burn all that sugar off before you touch those ketones in the first place.
Maybe there's some theory that the ketones might allow you to actually take more glucose.
Oh my!
But I'm not a fan of that. And but you're talking about what the consumer hears and what they want. They want it to mold into this dual fuel. That's sexy. That sells. And I'm like, you can want it all you want. If it works for you, great. But that's not what I'm recommending. So don't come back and say, hey, this didn't work. Like, well, I told you not to do it that way. but again, some people are able to do the dual, and some people will use it. A sugar-based person will use it just towards the end of the race when the brain starts to go. Why is the brain starting to go? Because the glucose isn't making it to the brain towards the end of the race. And that's when you start taking shortcuts. You start compromising. Well, I already PR'd last month. Do I need another performance record? If I do 10 seconds slower, will anyone know? You start negotiating. That could be a good time where you take the ketones. It fills that gap and your brain feels more sharp like the beginning of your race than at the end. And then indirectly, that can make you go faster because your brain is sharper. So there's many, many different uses of it. The protocols are vast. There's people that use it for traveling. So if you have an 8 to 10 hour flight for jet lag purposes, they take a little bit before and then you skip meals. I say, don't wake up. If you're already asleep, don't wake up to take it, but take it every couple of hours. Wake when you land, take another dose, and people, can go 12 hours across time zones and feel like they didn't have any, jet lag. There's also some radio protective benefits, from that. Some people take it before bed, which initially we said, no, don't take it before bed, but it's not a stimulant. People think of energy, they think of caffeine. It's not a stimulant. And people find that they aren't waking up at 2 or 3 a.m. with a cortisol spike. It's just somehow blunting that. We don't know why or how, but low doses, people are.
Yeah, I'm just thinking perhaps having an even fuel source while you're sleeping is enough to calm you down and keep you sleeping. But that's very interesting.
But I don't find that using it before bed when you're keto doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because you already have a nice baseline, and that little bit of a pop, you're cleaning your closet, and it's just like it's counter. So it's tricky. Different protocols, different uses, different amounts, different cost benefit, and you've got to find what is the best cost benefit. If you're a non-keto person, and the least expensive cost benefit way of taking it is actually before bed. Like if you could pick only one, and you can only do $1 a day worth, $2 a day worth. Try the sleep, because if you change your sleep, that changes everything.
Yes.
And now that's not even clinically proven. They've done tests on like high dose for elite athletes that are like 6 hours on a bike. Well, that's very different than someone that didn't have a bike ride today. This is just user experience. If you go to Amazon reviews and type in the word sleep, there's 20 people unsolicited that talked about how it helped their sleep. So yeah.
Well, so I told you before we started that I have a list of questions that are coming in from personal experience. So, and you've actually kind of touched on them, but I'd like to dive into your thoughts about them a little bit more. And then, of course, what you have said so far has opened up 100 different questions too. So who knows where we're going right now?
All
We're going to
right.
go on a little journey together. My first question is, and you mentioned it brief. Well, actually, you've said the word brain. So obviously, I'm coming at this lifestyle because I healed my mental illness, and then you were recommended to me by my good friend Eddie Rodriguez, who's very into neurological health. And then I'm just going to lump this one in there too. I have a personal friend who has suffered a traumatic brain injury. So I would just, that's my general big question with some specific points about how taking this product or using these ketones can help with brain health overall.
Yeah. So with the traumatic brain injury, it's blocking the brain's ability to use glucose. Like it all just simplifies bottom lines to that. So again, the test with them, if they took a small amount, not a large dose, because if you take a large dose and you've had a recent TBI, it can be excess energy, just too much, too stimulating. So a smaller amount, when I say smaller amount, you could try a $3 amount and then a $5 amount, not the, our super concentrated, which is like $30 for an entire bottle. More isn't always better. So chugging the entire bottle would be too much. But yeah, so for them, if you were to give them this, $5 amount and they felt mental improvement, that'd be an indication of sugar does the opposite. So here's a packet of sugar. How's your brain feel? It should feel the exact opposite. It should be very instant and obvious. But then that would be grounds for recommending for them to talk to a doctor about getting on a ketogenic diet. And I've even talked to some doctors that say, well, why don't you recommend this more? And they say, oh, it's just too hard to maintain. And I said, well, yeah, the clinical trials where you have unmotivated people that you're forcing them, half of them to do ketogenic, half of them not. Yeah, there's a 30% compliance, but give the customer, the patient, the choice and say, hey, some people find it hard, but those that are able to or are motivated or notice a big enough difference, they're able to do it. I've been keto and keto vegan to make it a little bit harder for the last 8 years. Like you just find a way, you just eat different things. So for them, yeah, I think that they should be fully keto, period. Like just bar none. Make sure you watch the salt intake. And whether they need to top off with the ketone ester would be a 1 or 2 week experiment of different amounts. And they might not need it. I would think that they probably aren't able to get enough through the ketogenic diet. So they probably would feel a benefit with the top off. But again, this isn't a 3 week test. We had one couple that, tried it for 3 weeks and it wasn't working. I'm like, no. This isn't a 3 week supplement that you try and then you're scratching your head. Oh, well, I changed my routine of what time I went to bed. So I don't know if it's a supplement or going to bed. No, this works day 1, day 2, day 3, or it doesn't, or we have to change the protocol, or you've missed something. Oh, I was taking it with my breakfast. Oh, no. Because some people think in terms of C8 oil that they have to take that with foods, and then they think that you have to take it with food. And also you don't take ketone ester and C8, by the way. You don't want to take them within the first 2 to even 4 or 5 hour range. They kind of can multiply the C8 GI issue. So I tell people either cut it out completely, or if you're demand to take it, you can take that in the morning and then the ketone ester in the sundowning 3-4 p.m. because you can't take caffeine. You might take it, separate part of the day. So for them, that would be a way to take it. You can also use it to transition into the ketogenic diet as well, just to make it a little bit easier. Because with someone like that, you might not want to. I actually, with TBI people, I have them ask their doctor, of course, but an initial onset of a TBI, I don't know if it's beneficial to immediately go keto. So that would be an interesting nuance of, do you really want to shock the system with this keto flu and all these different variables right after you had a hit? I don't know. So I don't know means no, unless you have a doctor that said, no, there is a way to do it properly. So that I resist telling people to, switch over to full keto after an immediate incident. But I also tell them not to drink Gatorade sugar. Definitely don't do that, but full keto might be too much. So maybe a lower carb, low glycemic index. Let's not get the blood sugar spikes. But then, yeah, they could try low dose 2 or 3 times a day, lower dose of the ketone ester, and for 7 to 10, 15 days. Even though I said acutely you should feel something different immediately, but something like that, which is more of a healing thing, then yeah, over 7 to 15 days to help with the healing of that.
Could it be considered neuroprotective as well? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So it would be good, even if you're not feeling the benefits, you may actually be doing a lot of healing that you just can't see.
Yeah. I tend to not talk about that because I tend to focus on people feeling things, because that's more realistic. But this, like, you can take NAD supplements and then in 60 days, maybe it's done something, but you've got no biomarkers, no data. Thank God I'm not in that business. I'm in the, hey, if you don't feel it, let's change things. But yes, neuroprotective, just like it would be on a ketogenic diet, it would be neuroprotective, but there might be some harm going, fully keto. There were mice studies where they compared having mice go TBI, fully keto, and mice that were given a TBI, and then they went and took the ketone ester, and both of the groups went just 100% back to their baseline, their pre-keto state. And I talked to Dr. Veach in an interview, and I said, well, they must have been 90% as fast as their non-keto self, because they just had a traumatic brain injury. They probably slow down a little bit, right? And he's like, what part of baseline do you not understand? Like, the TBI blocks the glucose utilization. Ketones use a different route, fills the brain. What's the issue? Like, it fills it back up. So yeah, there should be so much more research. It's painful that it hasn't been done yet on traumatic brain injury, because it would not be a difficult clinical trial. You find subjects that have a baseline data, they have a TBI, and you could do a double crossover very quickly and experiment with humans on what kind of difference we see in the brain, because it's instant.
Yeah, I that's the unfortunate part of this, is that there isn't that science, and everybody needs to have that clinical trial. But you also have a product that people could try, and perhaps it's going to help them if they're in this situation. And the people that I know that I'm asking about actually are already keto. So I'm wondering if it would help, like enhance the healing that they're trying to do because of that. So
don't take too much. I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't think or know that there's any difference between 1.5 and 4 millimolar. There's this notion of like 3 to 7 millimolar is a ketogenic, or this is optimal range, or 3 to 5 millimolar. I don't believe that. I don't think that's a real thing. And to the opposite of that, people will see that the ketone ester, they'll say that the downside of the ketone ester is that it peaks really fast and then comes down really fast. But what they're not understanding is that ketones don't do anything in the blood. They don't make the blood more red. They don't make it thinner. They don't make it more viscous. It is when it leaves the blood that it starts to work. So just because it peaked and went down, it'll still stay in the system for multiple hours doing things. So you don't have to necessarily re-up and freak out and have to, oh, my doctor said I must be over 2 millimolars all day long, so then re-up. That's the ketogenic diet that you're shooting for, this constant number. But taking the exogenous ketones, you don't want to be taking it all day long just to meet this artificial, 2 millimolar.
Yeah. And that's a really big thing within the mental and neurological health space. And I know there's studies on it, but I'm not versed on it, that you want your ketone levels higher. They're seeking very high numbers because they're seeing better results at these high numbers. But you have mentioned this several times, this blood ketones piece. So if we're measuring the blood ketones, are we getting an accurate representation of how much our body's actually using?
Right. Yeah. We don't get a full picture of it, because the BHB converts to acetoacetate. It has a whole Krebs cycle. So you're not seeing the whole lifeline of the product. And I've gone to these conferences where I blew on one of these acetate. Is it acetone or acetoacetate? When the breath meters test a different type of ketones, and I had taken ketone ester 3 hours earlier. I blew on their meter, and I blew up their number at the highest number that they've ever seen that says like, please call 911 now and lift the person off the floor because they're probably laying down, right? And I said, no, I drank ketone ester, and they're like, oh, thank God. So just because the blood is at a certain number exogenously doesn't mean that it's the same as, endogenously a consistent amount. And you can take too much ketone ester. You can take, so one person took, 3 full bottles of ketone ester, the $30, so took about $100 worth a day for a week while on metformin, while fasting, while type 2 diabetic, for losing weight for a wedding. And yeah, they landed in the hospital, and the case report came out saying, oh, these products that are claiming weight loss. I'm like, well, I wasn't claiming weight loss. So if they bought it with that expectation, that's on them. But we try to say no weight loss because people think that they can eat a cake, drink this drink, and be back into ketosis or back into fat burning mode. And it's like, no, it doesn't do that. The ketones will be there. So let's real quickly dive into the word ketosis. People have to understand what the word ketosis is clinically and what the consumer hears when they hear ketosis. Hypertechnically, ketosis is defined as ketones in the blood. So these exogenous ketones companies can say, drink this and you're in ketosis in 30 or 60 minutes. I never like to say that phrase, and it would make for great advertisements because 15 minutes in ketosis, like it's the fewest number of words to sell an idea. But they hear that and they think, in 15 minutes, I'm in fat burning mode. So they think of ketosis as burning fat to make ketones. Well, when you drink the drink, you skip fat burning and you just deliver the ketones. So people want it or expect it to trigger fat burning or get them, more in the mode, and it just doesn't do that. So then they get mad at me that they haven't lost weight. I'm like, well, where on our website did it say lose weight, and how many times do we say not for weight loss? So that's a big misconception, and that goes for, not only for ketone ester but ketone salts. Sometimes you'll see this multi-level marketing people selling ketone salts for weight loss, and they say, yeah, do the ketogenic diet and ketone salts and you'll lose weight. I'm like, okay. Or you could do a ketogenic diet, clap your hands, and lose the same weight. Like it's the ketogenic diet, stupid, not the clapping your hands or taking this exogenous thing. It doesn't work that way. Now, with a dietitian, could you take it properly to help your fasting? Sure. So if it's hard for you to skip breakfast and you take some exogenous ketones to help you skip breakfast, take you to lunch, okay, maybe you're eating fewer calories, and the fewer calories is at least short term. We can talk about, your body might change and metabolize differently. So then that fewer calories doesn't make you lose weight. So I'm not going to get into that debate, but it'll make you not hungry and help you skip that meal. Sure. Now, I like to say after a week or two, if your body's getting used to skipping breakfast, you might not need the exogenous ketone anymore. You might not need the ketone ester. If you can wean off of it, great. Then keep the ketone ester for, brain fog, important meeting, working out pre or post or sleep, and not use it anymore for that skipping of the meal. And one person was taking it for fasting purposes first thing in the morning. I said, well, do you have problems skipping breakfast? Oh, no, skipping breakfast is easy for me. I'm like, well, it won't skip 2 breakfasts for you. It doesn't make you burn more fat, so you're wasting it. Then why are you taking it? Now, there might be other longevity and brain reasons. Okay, sure, but he was doing it, for fasting. It's like, no, take it. How long can you normally last? They say, oh, until 11:30, 12, I get hungry. Okay, great. If you wanted to skip more meals, then you would take it at 11:30 and see if it pushes you to 2 or 3 p.m. Now, does that lose weight? Well, not eating lunch will have fewer calories, and it'll help you do that. So it's just really confusing, and people want things to be easy, like caffeine pills and these energy shots. And they have to listen to a podcast like this to really flush it out and understand this is what I want it to do. It probably isn't that. This is what it really does. And once you figure it out, many people find it beneficial.
Yeah, it's. I feel like you've taken a lot of this talk to say why not, because there will be a lot of people that shouldn't go this route, which which is good. I mean, you're still like, you have a product and you're like, but there's people who don't need it. So I like that. And also your website's very informative and answer a lot of these questions. So if you could pick one best reason for someone to take it, just one, what would be the best reason?
I can't. It's
Can't
really down to the
pinpoint one.
person. If someone's number one problem was sleeping, I would say take it for sleep. Whatever your biggest deficit and issue is, for that, because it works more when there's a deficit. If there's no deficit, there's nothing to bring you back from. So whatever the person's having the most problems with, they can focus on that. If it's something like bipolar or something, I would first recommend the ketogenic diet. Like, let's just get a stream of ketones in your system. But if they're reticent or they're reluctant or they can, or whatever your reason is, you would try some ketone ester, and the more that helps them, you could actually say, see, I told you. Now can we get on the dang ketogenic diet and not have to buy this drink, or find something where a hybrid works for you. So it is.
Well, the interesting answer, I guess, is it's filling in that gap.
Yeah.
And you're learning a lot about yourself. So if you're feeling this difference and you whatever that gap is, it gets filled up by this ketone ester, then I have some work to do if I want to not be reliant on this.
Yeah. And then so the separate product that we have.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that one. Let's talk about that one.
That's the hard ketones. And it might have been confusing in your intro because you kind of listed the benefit of the ketone ester, but then you threw in some of the benefits of the hard ketones, which are very separate molecules. So then it's really confusing for the customer to understand, well, what do ketones do? Do the ketones give you energy? Wait a second. You just said that it's a relaxing, sedative-like experience over here. So we like to put on the website different ketones, different results. So the type of molecule matters. So for the hard ketones, I would not use that for cognition, health, longevity. The main focus of that is getting people off of regular alcohol. So the desire people have, so it gives a little bit of a buzz, a noticeable buzz with one or two of them. And it just makes them not crave alcohol, makes them not crave more of itself. So as you know, the ketogenic diet reduces cravings in general. So with regular beer or wine, you have one, it's like, oh, let's have another. And then what happens? You get dumber, and then that dumber results in you eating worse, and then your sleep is worse, and then has this, cascading effect and weight gain. But this one or two, people feel content. They don't feel the need for more. I need more and more. And they just are content. It blocks their cravings for that glass of wine or even bottle of wine that they used to have every night for the last year or two. We have a podcast of a lady that was a bottle of night every night for the last 2 years, switched to 2 cans of this stuff, cold turkey, straight up, no problem. 45 days later, she stopped ordering. I'm like, hey, are you okay? Did you go back to alcohol? She's like, no, I'm sorry. I just went to, water. I'm like, what? That's not a negative. That's like perfect. You use it as a transition to get off of alcohol. But people also that are, I don't drink alcohol, for them, allowing them to introduce something that doesn't have the side effects of regular alcohol, like poor sleep the next day and all these side effects and addictive qualities. They'll bring it in and bring it to social events, to parties, or even bring the smaller bottles to a bar or restaurant and put it into their club soda to feel that relaxation sense. So that's a different product for different end uses. But if your main focus with your customers are just overall well-being, if they're drinking alcohol, the number one well-being thing that you can do is get them off of alcohol. So yes, you could use it for that.
No, I'm really glad that you brought this up. It's not because I work with people, and you don't want to get rid of pizza, and then but I love my wine. And those are probably the 2 biggest reasons that people are unable to keep their diet going. It makes it unsustainable for them because they want that thing. So I guess I'm very curious about it actually. So
Well,
it's
yeah,
hard ketones, and it
doesn't kick
gives
people
you
out of keto. So
it,
for the people that
yeah,
are keto, it doesn't kick them out of keto. So that's, much better than for them. It's exponentially. We don't even market it to keto people actually, but for them, it's exponentially better because alcohol kicks you out of keto and you got to start all over again. Our
yeah,
main audience
absolutely.
is the non-keto people that are trying to get off of alcohol. But yeah, if you have anybody on your short list and they're trying to get into keto, and every Friday night they've got to start the week-long process of getting to keto. Yeah, for them, it's even more groundbreaking for them because it doesn't kick them out of keto.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, 'cause that's such a challenge. Like, and everybody knows they're doing it. They always know that the alcohol is messing up their ketosis or that path to getting into ketosis, and it kind of stops it. They know it cognitively, but it's just something you get used to, or something you enjoy, and you want to replace that, or you want to go to the social gathering and feel like you can hang out with everybody in the same way, but you can't because you're trying to manage this with the diet, and the diet is limiting that ability. So this is really interesting that you have a product that can give that same feeling, but without all of the other kind of anti-ketogenic side effects that come along with it.
Yeah, and a lot of people think that the addiction is for the buzz, but it's actually the alcohol, ethanol converting into acetaldehyde, converting to acetate in the brain. Acetate is like vinegar, but it makes it through the brain with acetaldehyde. And if the buzz really was the addiction, then taking marijuana would make these alcoholics, not crave alcohol anymore. But it doesn't work. Why? Because it's the acetate that they are actually craving, but it happens to hit at the same time as the buzz. So people think that it's the buzz, but it's really the acetate.
Mm-hmm.
So when they drink this drink, it converts into beta hydroxybutyrate, which is a very similar molecule to acetate. And we think what it's doing is relieving the cravings for acetate with this replacement that's good enough. And when it turns into BHB, your brain gets actually a little bit smarter as opposed to a little bit dumber. So you actually don't make those late night munchies. And some people talk about our drink being expensive because they're comparing like $1.50 Naughty Light or dollar beer to our $4 or $5 can. And they're like, oh, it's 4 times more expensive. And yeah, but you're also not drinking 10 of them, not because it gives you a buzz of 10, but you just don't crave that next and next and next one. But then you're also, some people skip dinner. So they take this after work and they do intermittent fasting in reverse, and they just skip dinner, as opposed to not only dinner with alcohol, but then late night munchies, an extra 500,000 or 1,000 calories. What's the cost of those calories? And what's the cost to burn off those calories as far as gym time and stuff like that? So for people that actually get and understand the hard ketones, for them, we could charge 2 to 3 times more. But for the regular audience that doesn't quite get it, they see it in the alcohol alternative space, they see it as super expensive because it's just hard to understand what it is. And we've also, helped people get off of, 10, 15 years of drinking in a couple months. Well, how much did rehab cost when you went to rehab and it didn't work? And if we can get you off of alcohol and then just transition into our stuff once a week, once a month, you're going to save, tens of thousands of dollars, but people still are in the one drink versus one drink mentality. And then it seems,
Well, this is
super
no
expensive.
different than I'm spending all this money on steak. It's so expensive to eat a ketogenic diet, but what your alternative is to be really not unwell and have to pay
Yeah.
for physicians and medications and all of this stuff down the line. So yeah, make the adjustments to eat slightly more expensive foods
But
to
you
maintain
tell
your
me,
health.
have they looked in? Is it really more expensive? Because I would think fasting is pretty cheap. There's a
I'm
lot of
pretty sure
fasting.
that there have been some little
Right.
studies on this, and that the net it's about this. It's about the same, if not better, because you're not paying for all of those extra things. But yeah, if you're only looking at a steak versus a sandwich, yeah, you're going to get a much different
a
result.
bag of rice versus a steak. Yeah, it's actually a great analogy. A bag of rice, 10 cents versus a steak, $10, but you're not looking at everything else, let alone the medical bills, afterward. But yeah, with ketogenic diet, if you're able to incorporate on top of that some level of fasting, skipping one meal, that's money that is being saved. So
Yeah, I mean, well, look, if you were drinking a bottle of wine every night versus two of your hard ketone products, eventually you're going to miss that craving for that buzz
Right.
because of your product versus I'm always chasing that and all the sugar that's involved in that. Like you're taking in all the sugar on top of it. So all of those other you can't, it's hard. You can't compare what the down the line effects are in
Yep.
most cases, but you can clearly see that difference. I mentioned sugar. We're kind of out of time, but I do want to ask this question before we go. Um, are there like sugar alternatives in the products? Because I do work with a lot of people who have, like a sugar addiction. Are these products sweet
Yeah.
tasting?
So we only used the natural, quote unquote, natural sugar alternatives, the monk fruits, the stevias, and stuff like that. We don't use the sucralose. Sucralose makes these things taste much better. Like it just does. It tastes more like sugar. It overcomes the bitter in a way that stevia and monk fruit can't. On the hard ketone side, we do try to make them on the sweeter side to make them more pleasant, but it also has 17 grams of this thing that we call keto hall, the R13-butanediol. It's super bitter. So we're trying to do the absolute minimum sweetness to overcome that. For some people expecting super sweet, it's nothing. It's actually not sweet enough for them. But people that want it to be much less sweet, we do offer a raw version of that has no sweetener, but it's really bad. But some people say, "Oh, Frank, it's not bad." Well, it's all relative. If you expected OJ and it gave you this, you'd spit it out. If you expected something to be like some Chinese herbal bitter medicine, then it might not be bad. But it's pretty bad raw, but you can add your own
I
sweeteners
mean,
to
you
your
did
own
say at
level.
the very beginning that it tastes like vomit, so I'm not sure. I'm not sure if the unflavored one's the best choice, but to each
Yeah,
their
yeah.
own.
Well, but some people are super sensitive. Stevia is actually related the uh to the plant that gives the poison ivy plant. So some people just have allergic reactions to that. And some people, 1 out of 20, if for them stevia is like biting into a ball of aluminum foil. Like there's something like cilantro that some people just are hyper, their palate just goes crazy. So that's why we try to mix it up, some with monk fruit, some with stevia, some with none. On the ketone ester side, again, some are stevia and some are monk fruit based. We try to make it as low on the sweetness side as possible, but enough to overcome, the bitterness.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I just wanted to touch on that
Yeah.
because it seems like it would have to be in there.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody wants to drink anything that's that super bitter, but it is interesting that you do have a product because a lot of people won't make the product without the sweetener. So I appreciate that you do that because I can't take things a lot. Sweeteners I tend to stay away from myself.
Also with
So
the stevia, there are higher end stevias that people are used to the super cheap low end stevia, so they might have a reaction to that, but then they don't have a reaction to Reb M, which costs, I don't know, 4 or 5 times more expensive. So we use the more expensive stuff. So just because a cheap Trader Joe's base stevia affects you doesn't necessarily mean this is, because it's a different part of the molecule.
yeah, okay. Well, Frank, it has been very interesting. This has been really opened my eyes ever since you were recommended to me and I started looking into it. It was like, like for me, I'm just like, oh, it's a product. I don't know about it, but it's very fascinating and a rabbit hole I probably needed to go down a lot sooner than I did. So thank you for opening my eyes
And
to
we have to
that.
get you some. Like, I feel embarrassed that I didn't get you the podcast. Maybe part 2, you can come back and say, this is what it did. This is what it did not do.
Well, here's an
Try
interesting
different amounts.
thing. I'm already thinking about part 2 because my brain triggered at keto vegan and I need to know more. And we clearly didn't have enough time to do that. So we're going to have a part 2 and it'll be me talking about having tried the ketone ester products, and then you telling me more about keto vegan. I actually get asked this question all the time. Can you be ketogenic and a vegan? And I'm like, yes, it's possible, but it's difficult and it's not something I do, so I don't know.
Yeah, sure.
So
Lots of nuts, lots of avocados.
yeah,
Lots
we're
of
going to
tofu.
have a conversation about nuts and avocados here in the future. So I really appreciate you coming on today and telling me all about this. So where can people find you?
So KetoneAid.com is the main website. And if you're interested, that's KetoneAid.com. And if you're interested in the hard ketone side, that would be hardketones.com. It is always less expensive on our website than Amazon because Amazon takes a cut. So we have to mark it up there a little bit. And you also get another notch down if you use the code free ship. And if you use a subscription, it also knocks off. And then we have multi-packs, so the price drops as you buy more and stack it with these subscriptions. We don't do the 40% subscription off thing. It's just a token, 10, 15%, but it does, add up over time. And let us know if it doesn't work. We also have a Facebook group, people that are reluctant. They can go on there and ask a community of non-me questions about, we'll do this, we'll do this. And if it doesn't work, they also go on there and say, hey, it didn't work for me. This is what I did. And people will text in and say to our customer support, say, hey, this didn't work. And I say, great, go post it on the Facebook group and let people chime in on, hey, try to do it this way. So it's not just coming from me. And 90% of the time we can figure out, what was done wrong, but sometimes it just doesn't work. This one lady, I gave her I should give her like a gold medal. Like, yes, we tried absolutely everything and it did not work for your system. She had some issue that was energy fuel related that it just didn't work. I said, this is, she got her money back and said, I don't think this is for you. It just didn't work.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we can 90% of the time tweak it and make it work for them, for their needs.
Yeah, interesting. So, well, I will put all of those things in the show notes so that people can find your products and find the Facebook group. That's I mean, I'm really pro community, but to be able to kind of troubleshoot these questions with a group of people who are actively in it, that's pure gold right there. And that's not to say that I mean, like I said, your website's very informative. There's a lot of information there, but to hear it from someone else that's done it is very good. So, well, thank you again. I really appreciate you joining me. Thanks for hearing our keto biography. Bye.